Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Periodic Table. I'm super fortunate to have Tony Heyman here with me. Tony has one of these careers that, a lot of people could only hope for. He's worked for one of the most iconic brands in history, honestly, in Verizon. He spent over a decade there performing a whole variety of different roles, whether it be kind of fostering ideas and innovation on the venture capital side, to running business units as a general manager, vice president of the entire customer organization, and really kind of owning and operating all of the different facets of those kind of aspects of the business there within. And so we're thrilled to have Tony joining us today for a little bit of a chat. Welcome, Tony.
Great to be here. You're very kind.
Well, it's easy to be kind when you have that kind of Rolodex and resume. So, why don't we just kind of jump into it? Tony, obviously a lot of your experience has been customer centric. I mean, this brand that you happen to spend a little bit of time with in Verizon was all about the customer, and you led the customer transformation there. You were tasked with rethinking, the entire, I'll say, customer service of the future. Like, what did that actually mean in your mindset?
Yeah, it meant creating competitive differentiation, brand love, growth, efficiency. And we were thinking about the current state of how are we delivering service in that moment, but also the future state. Where is the puck going? Considering the ever-increasing expectations that customers bring. And we knew we had a portfolio of increasing complexity, and we had to care for all of that. I think there was also a context that everyone's dealing with. As we improve digital self-service, that takes on more of the routine tasks. So Our humans have to take on increasingly complex, emotionally charged, high-risk efforts from the customer. And it becomes more critical than ever to get that right. So in terms of meeting that challenge, we focused on some important areas. One was predictive, proactive. How do you solve customer issues before they even know that they have one, which we know is way better for the customer and also way better for the business, more cost effective. That doesn't always happen. We'd love to, but it doesn't always happen. When that needs to fall to a human, how do we make sure we're solving issues on the spot? In that moment of truth, how do we make sure we're ready to make that right? Part of that, we considered new labor models and the organization and support structures needed to make that work, including digital tools, enablement, empowerment. And the last thing I'll say there is real focus on upstream improvement. How do we take the data that we're learning from customers, our journeys, and feed that upstream to improve our products, our processes, our tools along the way? Always better to get it right in the first place rather than have to fix it reactively.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of juggling, right? A lot of different aspects to balance at one time. And you talked a little bit about automation, right? And I think of automation in this particular moment, this particular day and age, it happens to be somewhat contextually associated with AI. Like, how did you take such a large organization and implement aspects of automation, whether it's ML, AI, something else, and really kind of balance that human in the loop, right? Because you had such a large employee base.
Yeah, I mean, doing anything that we're talking about does require the right foundational technology. You have to do that. You have to get your models, you have to have the teams right, you have to do all that. But ultimately, it becomes about meeting customers where they are with empathy and solving their problems in that moment. I think it becomes really important to remember that AI is not about reducing people. It's not about efficiency. It's creating space for our people to serve customers even better. Customers appreciate getting the service the way they want it. They appreciate great digital experiences. They want resolution on their, again, difficult, emotionally charged situations, which is a real moment of truth for the business. So it becomes critical, I keep saying, enabling and empowering the frontline agents. But if you think about it, you're doing that so they can focus on the customer versus digging around systems for answers. So if you give agents, customer insights, sentiment guidance, AI-enabled tools, then they can focus on the experience and empathy for the customer.
I think, they are the representation of the business, right? That is who I as a customer interact with. And, if Jane is having a bad day, then what? Like, that's going to probably impact my perception of the brand. And so we want to empower those people as much as possible. And I think it's a really interesting moment in time that, really you were way ahead of the curve on. And because of all those experiences, you definitely have seen a lot of good and bad. What would you say, and I'll just call it this AI transformation, but when you're implementing AI in the customer success, customer experience space, like what are the biggest things to watch out for? What are the biggest mistakes?
I think one of the biggest ones is focusing too much on the technology and getting enamored with that. It's not about the AI, it's about the results. So you have to think about practical use cases that deliver tangible value back to the business. What would the CFO say? What would the executive, what would the customer say? I would say it also needs to be a business-led effort. With technology partners, not led by technology, the user should prioritize use cases, lead iterating rapidly with technology and driving adoption. Because if you don't adopt this stuff in the business, it all becomes an expensive hobby instead of making real business change. And bring focus. Don't try to do too much. Major on the majors. Think about the impact of what you're doing times the viability of making it happen. And that can lead you to the most important elements to go after in terms of prioritizing. So you can't do everything. And that will also help you deliver value sooner, build internal momentum and support, and then also set a foundation for the future. So what you're building, you can build upon it and get to the next use cases. So sort of, in other words, start simple. Automate the more routine, high volume cases first. As I said before, use AI to empower and enable your people so they can be at their best and deliver for the customer. And a caution is make sure that your AI and automation is consistent across all touch points and channels, bots and humans. So don't have differences across channels, or don't have your humans saying one thing and your bot saying another, because you'll break down trust and you'll create unintended consequences of work coming back to you. So I think customers that get that right can make incremental, high impact improvements, but also build momentum rather than trying to launch some big, massive AI project that doesn't get adopted well.
Yeah, it's an integrated kind of approach, or needs to be. And it made me think about this statistic that I always kind of see rolling around, and I probably quote it 3 times a week. 80% of chief executive officers don't know where to start when it comes to AI and implementing it within their organization. And as part of that, it's a difficult concept. I see a lot of paralysis when I speak to executives and enterprises and so forth. What would you say is like step 1 in order to get started from your experience?
Well, sort of step 0, I'd say.
Or 0?
Is ready, right? Make sure the leadership team is ready and bought in and ready to go. But after that, step 1 is get your data ready. You really need a single source of truth. Break down the silos so you can enable a common view and enable insights, again, across all your channels and customers. So the data can't be fragmented across different systems and departments. Then you get into that whole dynamic of giving different answers to customers, which breaks down trust. I would suggest picking top domains and use cases, again, impact times viability. So you pick the right ones. And then you can focus on the necessary data sets so you can avoid boiling the ocean. There's a ton of data out there, so focus becomes important. Pick the data you need for your top use cases, get that right, and then you have clean data, clear aligned objectives, and that sets you up for success.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think in many cases, there's this misperception that AI, or name your favorite LLM, is somehow going to resolve all of these data quality, data organization kinds of issues. They can do some of it, but it definitely is not a silver bullet. And when you have inference like this, you can't operate a business like that. It has to be something much more finite in nature. Otherwise, you're going to create a whole bunch of risk for the organization.
Right.
Well, and along those lines, you've led these massive transformations with massive budgets, massive number of people involved, customer service overhauls to kind of integrating AI, as we were just talking, and reinventing business processes. It's all very difficult. You have to orchestrate a variety of different things. What would you say is your number one leadership lesson to go through that kind of transformation? Because I think that a lot of people are knee deep or neck deep in it right now.
Yeah. I would say that people don't resist change on spec. They resist change because they don't understand it or don't understand the value that it brings to them. So we all know, we've all been there. No one has enough time, resources, budget, people. So the transformation needs to matter. You have to make it matter. And you have to have the right owners, which goes back to having the BU owners in that leadership position, not having necessarily technology do that. And I like to say transformation can't be done to people. It has to be done with people and for people.
Yeah.
It needs to be super aligned with the business mission, strategy, and targets, because that's how people care. And it has to help leaders win and deliver their goals. It can't be a side hustle that someone else is doing. When it helps a leader achieve the goals that they're on the hook for, then you get buy-in and adoption and support. So for example, we would bring frontline teams into a process early. We would ask for their input, get them involved, get them engaged and test and learn, and took their feedback and made it super clear that we listened to them. And then iterated and iterated. And then they knew why we were doing what we were doing and how it would help them, not replace them. And that buy-in makes all the difference to getting the product right, but also making sure you're ready to adopt it rapidly and at scale.
Yeah, you're not ambushing anybody. You're making them part of the process, and hopefully they embrace it and, like you said, take ownership in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, solving your problems.
Yeah, and I will say that that's easier said than done, right? So by virtue of the fact that you're able to do it multiple times throughout your career, like, kudos to you. A big part of what you did focused on data. We talked about that a little bit. And you were in this 25-year span where data was not valued at all to being perceived as gold, right? And throughout that, I'm curious about how you culturally ended up evolving the organization to, I'll say, respect that data, to, really make data-driven decision-making part of the culture, versus, I just, I kind of feel like this is the answer. So can you kind of walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, and it's tough. We know that, and that the highest paid person's opinion, and we all have experience. Right? Yeah. That's sort of the default. I will go back a little bit to the data needs to be valuable, help people deliver on their goals and make their jobs easier, and also that they need to be engaged in the process. They need to say what they need to produce better outcomes. But then it comes down to, okay, let's be really transparent about the data effectiveness, good or bad. And that's okay, because then you build trust. And even when the data is not perfect, and oftentimes, frankly, it's not, they can participate to improve it versus spending their time shooting it down. Get them engaged in making it right, again, against their priorities, and keep them from spending time, again, proving that it's not right. I will say that even when you do that, there still is a need sometimes to burn the boats. Sure. You got to move to the new way of working, burn the spreadsheets, get out of that, and at some point you need to call it and say, we've done the work together, we've prioritized what's important, we've iterated, we've gotten the data right. Now the old has to go away and in with the new. And ultimately, when better, faster, data-driven decisions add value for the business, they will be embraced, and they should.
Yeah, I love the burn the boats, reference, because there is a point where you just have to say, let's go. right? And I think many times we culturally just want to make this a consensus building kind of activity, and that there does need to be that leadership moment where you just say, go forth and conquer, embrace this, and be successful. So
I think you earn the right to say, okay, time to burn the boats if people have been engaged in it and been part of the process. Maybe not everybody, but the right representatives that people trust are part of that process. And then you earn the right to do it because you haven't just dropped stuff on the users.
Exactly. So if you put your tinfoil hat on and you started to look into the future, and some of this might be AI centric, probably, what do you see as the next big shift in the way that organizations cater and curate to this customer of the future, the customer experience? What does that look like?
I think it's about hyper-personalization at scale from a customer's point of view. And I also think about that as conversation continuance across all digital and human touch points. So think about AI bots, agentic, we're all talking about that, can help customers end to end, or escalate to a human with context, but you're still caring for that relationship. And if we think about our own experiences, we all want predictive and personalized and connected experiences, and maybe get a little cranky if it's not. Don't make me repeat myself. Bring me options that aren't just generic, but they're meaningful to me, and make me feel special, not just in the mill. And I think AI is getting really good at understanding customer intent and connecting all manner of insights into a holistic, personalized, continuous experience. So helping to make that whole thing real. So you can think about customer service and customer experiences across a journey where you're remembered, your history is remembered, your needs are anticipated as we think about predictive, proactive that we talked about, and maybe even get solutions before you even ask, and you're treated more like family. And ultimately what the business wants is to build that loyalty that's so critical to businesses everywhere.
Yeah, it's I was having this conversation about Amazon and why are we such disciples of Amazon. My contention was because of convenience, and somebody else was contending that it was because of personalization. And I felt like the personalization was still missing the mark because of exactly that, treating you like family. Like, gone are the days where you walk into the corner store or the grocery store and the person says, "Hi, Tony, how are you?" Right? "I have your favorite candy bar right here," or whatever it might be. Or, "Here, I have this pack of gum on me," right? Like, those kind of experiences are dead. But they could be resurfaced in an interesting way, given some of these techniques that you're talking about. And I think that's what excites me about kind of what you described.
Yeah, and we don't want to be creepy. We don't want the AI to be creepy and know too much about people, but knowing the right amount within the walls of the business, but also other things that we might know, and bringing that to helping the customer. And I think it does matter if you're using it for the benefit of the customer, they embrace it. If you use it for the benefit of the business and not the customer, they may not. But I think that's how you drive value.
Yeah, it's a good nuance that you're calling out as well. I could keep on going through a whole variety of different scenarios and questions to kind of pick at your experience, but I want to be respectful, and I'd love to actually, if you're open for it, kind of throw out some kind of quick fire type of ideas if that works.
All right, be gentle.
All right. I hope that these are gentle. Yeah. What would you say is your best career advice you've ever received?
Definitely that leadership matters. It only happens if you make it happen.
Okay. Yeah, I think that you can't hope and pray, right? You gotta be deliberate. I like that.
Wait.
What is the most exciting trend in business transformation?
I do love AI-driven capabilities, but in the context of enabling, not the technology, as I said before, but the ability to enable real change to our ways of working, speed, outcomes, and making us all better.
Yeah, I love that. And if you could go back 10 years, right, one of these proverbial, what would you do differently, if anything?
I think I'd start sooner to build AI, machine learning capabilities, and the underlying foundational elements that are needed to propel that and build that into the fabric of the business. I think I'd start that sooner because it's a longer journey than a lot of people think it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the learning curve, even though it feels like it's enveloping us right now, like, it takes a little bit to get your sea legs there. I've been reading, a variety of different books, and I always like to understand, kind of what interesting people like yourself are reading. What would you say is, your best business leader book that you've come across?
I really appreciate Think Again by Adam Grant. Open your mind.
Yeah, he's a great author, definitely, and great podcaster for that matter. Well, Tony, I appreciate you taking this little slice of time to banter around some ideas. Truly appreciate it. Would love to have you back again and talk more, both about your experience as well as kind of what we're going through. I'm sure that things will change here in the not too distant future, and we'll have a lot more to talk about. So I appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me, Seth. It was great.
All right. You take care. Bye, everybody.
Good.